Lakeland Currents, your public affairs program for north central Minnesota. Production funding for Lakeland Currents is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org. Closed captioning for Lakeland Currents is sponsored by Nisswa Tax Service, tax preparation for businesses and individuals. Online at nisswatax.com.
Hello again, my name is Jason Edens and I'm the host of Lakeland Currents here in our Brainerd studio. Thanks for joining us and thanks for your support of Lakeland Public TV. Friends, here in our region, there are countless people with passion and purpose who are working tirelessly on behalf of their communities and indeed the entire world. However, not all those people with that unique constellation of passion, purpose, and professionalism have the opportunity to bring their contributions or their ideas forward. Indeed, right here in our midst, there are many potential leaders, many potential change makers, and many potential social entrepreneurs who may or may not ever emerge as such. But fortunately for all of us, the Initiative Foundation, based in Little Falls, is working to ensure that all that potential gets unlocked. One of the ways in which the foundation does that is through its relatively new Initiators Fellowship Program. And here to tell us much more about the Initiators Fellowship Program is longtime community leader and director of the program at the foundation, Chris Fassner, and one of the new fellows, John Friesner, who is the principal at Grow Shed, which we'll learn a lot more about today. So thank you both for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
So Chris, I've had the opportunity to work with the foundation in some capacity or another for about the past 20 years, but many of our viewers may not actually be familiar with the foundation's work or even know that it exists. So what is the Initiative Foundation and what does it do?
We are one of 6 regional foundations that were created over 30 years ago by the McKnight Foundation to serve greater Minnesota. So there is an Initiative Foundation that serves every county outside the Twin Cities metro area. And we were created in response to a rural recession in the late 80s. So hardwired into the DNA of all of these Initiative Foundations is rural economic development and community development. And we do a lot of different things. We run programs, we make grants to nonprofits, we make loans to businesses to help them expand and create good jobs in greater Minnesota. But essentially everything's about improving the quality of life in our various regions. And so the Initiative Foundation of Central Minnesota, we serve 14 counties. We're based in Little Falls. We serve 14 counties kind of surrounding us, all the way up to Cass, over to the Wisconsin border, down to the Twin Cities suburbs, to Todd and Wadena counties on the west.
Well, thanks. That's a big service shed. And speaking of sheds, John, if you can tell us a little bit about Grow Shed before we learn about the fellowship, before we learn about how the fellowship has supported your business. What is Grow Shed and what's its origin story?
Yeah, so the elevator pitch is we are building prefabricated turnkey hydroponic farms. So basically what we're doing is we're trying to capitalize on the off-season in Minnesota, which is the greatest season, the biggest and longest season, to have fresh, hyper-local food production. By hyper-local, we mean literally being able to produce it hydroponically indoors behind a grocery store, behind someone's house, at a CSA co-op headquarters, at a nonprofit, right almost at source of use or consumption. You're able to access fresh, locally grown, safe produce all year round.
Well, how does it work? So it's a shed, it's actually a structure in which you're growing the food, is that correct?
Correct. They're an entire turnkey unit, and the building that they're housed inside of is part of that actual unit. And they are sheds, but they are not just any old shed. They're built very specifically for indoor agriculture in order to take the high humidity, water loss and that's going to happen and things like that. For the most part, the buildings are foam, a lot of foam, and what that does is it makes the buildings very durable against that humidity and moisture. It also makes them extremely easy to heat, which is obviously going to be an issue in Minnesota.
Indeed.
When, for instance, we had 47 below zero actual air temperature at our headquarters last winter during the polar vortex, and our farms still, even at that temperature, continued to have to cool themselves off by exchanging air with the outside. And that's very important for a few reasons. Plants need fresh CO2, and we need to get rid of that excess heat and humidity. So in order just to transfer heat like that with the outside air, you got to have a very well insulated shell that you start with. So there are sheds, but they're kind of super sheds, so to speak.
So you use the term hyper-local.
Yeah.
So are these sheds for homeowners or businesses, or what exactly is the ideal application for a grow shed? Could I use one at my house?
Yeah, absolutely, all of the above. We're making sales in all different sectors. The neat thing about what we're doing is everybody has to eat. So it's a problem for everybody. If you want to have fresh, local access to food, that's everybody. And so we're selling from everything from electric cooperatives who are very interested in greening up their solar grids or their grids, because if they're sending power and it's not getting used, indoor agriculture is a great opportunity because plants act as batteries. They can convert, in indoor agriculture, they can convert watts into protein. And that protein is actually a higher value crop than the actual electricity to begin with was. So a lot of interest from cooperatives in being able to do that, which is great too, to be able to offer maybe even off-peak and rebates to customers using our farms for food production purposes. Right now to people, backyards. We have individuals that are purchasing, lots of individuals that are purchasing these that just want to put it in their backyard because they're tired of what's available at the grocery store. They're tired of the insecurity as far as whether what they're eating is safe, whether it's nutrient dense, whether where it came from. Lots of people that are very concerned about the environmental impact of our current global shipping and food production system, and they want to see change in that, and they see GrowShed as a huge opportunity in their own state. We're a central Minnesota-based company, so we are right in their backyard, and so they love that too. The amount of people that have come forward, just like they're so proud that what we're doing is happening right here in Minnesota, in a state that desperately needs it, is just kind of adds to the kind of excitement that a lot of our customers have around our product.
So you use the term indoor agriculture as if it's a term of art. What does that exactly mean? What does indoor agriculture mean?
Correct. So indoor agriculture, you're using frequently hydroponics, which is growing in a nutrient-rich water, or aeroponics, which is basically the same thing, except you're misting it. You can even go soil-based indoor agriculture, but there's some extra issues with soil and as far as bugs and bacteria and things like that go. But the big thing with indoor agriculture is it's under LED lights, so we're not incorporating the sun for the most part in indoor agriculture. And in GrowShed, we're not incorporating the sun at all. It's completely grown under LED light conditions. There are also the heating systems in the farm, and we use hydroponics, and we can build soil-based farms as well. But in a nutshell, that's what you're growing indoors. And so a lot of people are like, why aren't you using the sun? That's probably one of the biggest questions we get is why not put glass panels or a retractable roof or something like that. And the big thing with Minnesota is for a huge chunk of the year, the sun just literally does not rise high enough in the sky and is not up long enough in order to get most of your garden variety plants to grow. You could have a heated space that's all clear, and you're not going to get a tomato to grow in February in Minnesota. It's just literally not possible because there's not enough radiation from the sun reaching Earth. That's why it's so cold outside. In order to get plants like that to grow. You can get some varieties of plants, but most of the things that we're going to the grocery store and buying, cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, zucchinis and eggplants and green beans, lettuces and herbs, things like that, are not going to grow for a large portion of the off season in Minnesota. Directly off sun.
So I want to learn a lot more about the fellowship and your fellowship, but just very briefly, why is GrowShed a positive alternative to conventional sourcing of food?
The biggest and most obvious one is it's year-round, multiple crops per year. We are not a hydroponics indoor versus anything else. We're an addition to company. I have a 3,000 square foot, super spoiled raised garden bed that we run as a family, love soil farming. The whole GrowShed vision was born out of the frustration of it being 3 months long and then 9 months of planning for the next year. And so the business was born out of a prototype for us to solve our problem, and then realizing that, we're not the only ones that are having this frustration. That frustration is everywhere. And so that's where it became a business. So that's kind of the biggest one is it's winter crops, it's multiple crops, it's winter income for farmers, things like that. And it's also, you can get a significantly more out of the same square footage as opposed to soil-based farming because you can't stack the sun. You get one level with indoor agriculture because everything's LED lights. You can go, I mean, hypothetically, you could go infinitely tall. I mean, you can just keep stacking shelves higher and higher, and you can really pack a significant amount of food into a very small space.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
So, Chris, before we talk about the Initiators Fellowship specifically, what's a fellowship?
A fellowship is I think of it as a program and a suite of supports, usually for an individual. Excuse me. I've been battling some of that chest crud. As opposed to, like a grant or an investment in a business, a fellowship's an investment in a person and an idea. And in this case, it's a 2-year program through the Initiators Fellowship.
So please tell us more about the Initiators Fellowship specifically. How did it start? How old is it?
Sure.
How many fellows are there? Who is this in partnership with?
So let me just say that the high-level overview, it's a 2-year program for emerging or budding social entrepreneurs, so early-stage social entrepreneurs, whether that they're social enterprises in a for-profit business or a nonprofit business. We're looking for people with really interesting ideas that are desiring to have a positive social impact. And in combination with that, we're looking for people who are local leaders. We like to talk about choosing keystone leaders, and that's language we kind of borrowed from the field of ecology, where a keystone species is a species in a natural community that has a disproportionate impact on the rest of the community. So we're looking for change makers. You kind of said it in the beginning. And people who have this purpose and passion to make a difference through some kind of business. So the program, 2 years long, and I mentioned there's a suite of supports. What I mean by that is the fellows, and there are 7 of them in this current second cohort of ours, they receive financial assistance. So $30,000 a year to help them in their leadership, network, and enterprise development. So this money's essentially intended to help give them the bandwidth to really focus on the development of this social enterprise. They have an additional $3,000 fund that they can tap into for training that is unique to their needs, not general to the rest of the cohort. They meet monthly with a mentor, so we match them with successful business mentors, and then over the 2-year period, they'll meet monthly with that person who will advise and coach them and just problem solve, help them advance their cause. And then we convene them roughly quarterly over the 2 years so that they can be together as a cohort. We can provide more generalized training and support. And then we just offer sort of resource referral and supports in any other way that we can to help these amazing people kind of pursue their dreams and make Greater Minnesota even greater.
Nice. Now, is this the first time the foundation has offered a fellowship? A lot of foundations do have fellowships. Is this a first for?
The Initiators Fellowship is our first fellowship program. This is our second cohort. So we had an inaugural cohort. The idea, back in 2015, 2016, the board of the Initiative Foundation and the staff, we were really looking at the fact that a lot of local leaders were baby boomers and kind of aging out of leadership positions. I mean, there's small towns in Greater Minnesota that can't fill their city councils and things like this because the leaders have moved on and younger folks aren't stepping in to take their places. And so we did some rough calculations and figured there were over 10,000 local leadership positions just in central Minnesota, from elected office, appointed office, nonprofit boards of directors, things like that. And our board had a conversation about what's our role in developing local leadership. And this program kind of was spawned out of that. We had a particular board member who was familiar with a fellowship program in New York called the Echoing Green Fellowship, which is also intended for social entrepreneurs. In their case, mostly social entrepreneurs who are working internationally. Okay. But he came to us and he said, can we duplicate this? Can we replicate and modify this program in central Minnesota? And so that's kind of where the idea was born. We had an initial cohort of 4 members, 2017 and 2018. And then we took last year as kind of a planning year because we've expanded now. Mm-hmm. And we're partnered with the Southwest Initiative Foundation and the West Central Initiative, so that we went from serving just our 14 counties in central Minnesota to 41 counties in West Central, Southwest, and Central Minnesota.
So those are 2 of the other initiative foundations.
Those are two of the other
6 that you spoke of.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you use the term social enterprise. That's a term that I'm familiar with, but it's possible that some of our viewers don't know what a social enterprise is or social entrepreneurship. So I'm curious to ask that question to both of you, actually. What is social enterprise?
It's a great question, and there's a wide variety of definitions, and definitions are really open to interpretation to a degree. But essentially, I think of it this way. If you think of a traditional business having a single bottom line, and that bottom line being profit, social enterprises have a double or even sometimes a triple bottom line. And the double bottom line is they are very intentionally designed and developed to have a positive social impact. And they want to generate revenue. So that's where the double bottom line comes in. Sometimes people refer to an organization with a triple bottom line where they are concerned with profit, people, and planet. And so add in the
profit, people, and planet. Well, that certainly is a good way to describe the work that you're doing, because it seems to ding all those bells. So I'm curious to ask you what social enterprise is, but before we go there, how did you learn about this fellowship opportunity, and when did you apply?
Yeah, so
how did you get involved?
Yeah, our team had put an application in. We competed in the Minnesota Cup, and our location kind of popped up on the radar of somebody that was part of the fellowship leadership. And so then Chris had actually contacted me and said, hey, you should fill out this application. This is something that applies to you in your region. And so I'm really grateful that he reached out to us, because we were in the midst of building our shop and everything. And so it was a very, very busy time. And I filled out that application and read up on what it even was. And it was just so neat to see something that was serving greater Minnesota, because there is so much happening, so many accelerators and incubators in the Twin Cities area that we're a long ways away from. It's really hard, especially with the scheduling and traffic and families, to go all the way to the cities to be a part of any of those things. So I jumped on that right away and was excited to even be able to send them an application.
So having just learned from Chris that there's this suite of services that come with the fellowship, there's a $30,000 per year stipend, there's $3,000 in customized training, there's all of these other aspects of the fellowship. How are you using that? How is this actually helping grow GrowShed?
Yeah, it's great. Obviously, any revenue helps as a startup company. Everywhere we look, we have places and things we'd like to be doing, but the hang up always is economics. We got to budget and save. So just a couple things that it's going to right off the gate help us with is launching what's called GrowShed Academy, which is going to be an online database of videos where we're going to be talking about things like what is indoor agriculture, what is hydroponics. It's going to be a completely education-based, because that's part of our marketing as well, is to educate people on what some of not necessarily what some of the problems are. I think I frequently am preaching to the choir when it comes to what's going on with our food system. Especially moms at grocery stores, they know what's available at the grocery store and that it's not fantastic.
And dads.
Yes, we're trying to bring some education into that of there are other opportunities and there are other things that we could be doing as a state and as individuals. And then the environmental piece of that as well is a big chunk of that too. So that's one of the things. And then being able to travel, like we were talking before, we have the nation's only solar-powered mobile hydroponic farm that operates year-round. And we love to travel with it, to go to high schools, universities, gardening clubs, anywhere really that'll have us. But there's an expense. You know, if I'm not at the shop and I'm out doing those things, there's work not getting done, there's fuel being burnt, it's costly to operate the farm, things like that. So those are just two quick examples that are going to be happening more often for us.
Where did you take the mobile grow shed most recently?
To the home remodeling show down in the Twin Cities. So some of your viewers might have even caught it it was on Fox 9 News and I think WCCO and a couple other things. We were down there for the trade show. We got invited down there to be part of their sustainable alley. They're trying to incorporate more, there's so much more interest arising in sustainable living and things like that they invited us down there to be a part of that. And it just went really, really well. And interfaced with thousands of people, lots of great questions, lots of great exposure. So it was a really good time for our whole team to be down there.
As a result of that experience, did you recalibrate any of your thinking in terms of where you're going to take Grow Shed?
I think we got excited. Back to the social enterprise piece of it is we got excited to just, as a team coming back from that, thinking about all the different things that could get launched out of grow sheds being everywhere. And what happens when all the little communities that start popping up and organizations that support grow shed and support local growing, the infusion of winter income into CSAs and co-ops and small farmers, like what that could mean for those communities, what it could mean, I mean, just the micro communities that could pop up out of what we're doing. We just kind of had a dreaming moment there of like, this could be really, really
Huge.
neat to just see the social change, which is at the heart of what we're doing. Is It's not, we always say Grow Shed is not just a product. We see it as a movement from a global food growing, shipping, consuming system to a local food system for many reasons, environmental reasons, economic reasons. I mean, why not grow our own food? Then the money stays here. We have more oversight and control of it. We get to choose what we want and grow what we want. And so let the market, the local market, run itself. And there's so many great opportunities there that gets us as a team kind of excited about thinking 10 years down the road.
So where can someone go to kick the tires? You're based in Emily, I understand. Can I actually go to Emily and see a grow shed?
Oh, absolutely. We're on the Google, so if you Google it, you'll find us in our headquarters and see our business hours there. People can swing in and see our mobile farm. We frequently will have a farm being stress tested that's going to be going to a customer, so they can see those things too. Our website, growshed.org, has lots of information on there as to what it is, what we're doing, what it costs, where we're going to be, all kinds of stuff like that. And then obviously Facebook, Instagram, we try to keep up with that as far as where we're going to be in day-to-day stuff and pictures of plants, lots of pictures of plants.
Nice. So John, you're obviously a great example of the type of person that has that passion and that purpose, but you're not alone in the cohort, correct? You're one of 7 fellows, is that right? So who can tell me about some of the other fellows that you're supporting? I'm very eager to hear, because this is a continuum. You have a very interesting product, there's a technical component, there's obviously a food distribution component, and so much more. But that's but one of the 7 efforts that the foundation is supporting.
Yeah, and with our expansion into the Southwest region and West Central region, we, in our selection process, we really were striving for diversity of ideas, diversity of individuals, and we have 2 fellows serving in the West Central region, 2 in the Southwest, and 3 in Central. And like I said, just a wide variety of projects, and at just about every stage. John is definitely probably further along in the continuum of development. We have some people just at the idea stage. And so just for instance, there's a woman down in Morton, Minnesota, who wants to, right now it's an idea. she wants to start up a Dakota Arts Center that supports local native artists by providing supplies for their art efforts and a space where they can exhibit and kind of build a community around their arts. Down in Worthington, there's a young woman who is opening up an immigration law office. Another really interesting story.
Who's eligible to apply?
That's a great question, and I'll just back up and say, you know, John talked about being selected into this fellowship. We were hoping to have 50 applicants in our last round. We had 80. So, you know, the kind of two primary conditions of applying are geography. It has to be somebody living in one of our living and working, you know, serving our 41 counties. And they have to be engaged in social enterprise. And then beyond that, we're looking for leadership ability and or potential. And so there's a long and involved selection process. Once we gather up the applications, we involve outside readers and screeners to help us rate and sort. And then a really interesting thing is the selection day, where we narrowed it down to 15 finalists, and they came to a day-long event at St. John's where they were interviewed by small groups of people, and they met other selection panelists, and then they each had to get up and pitch themselves and their project to a group, and then the selection panelists convene afterwards and kind of make really tough decisions. It was really tough. I mean, one of the most inspiring things about this whole fellowship is how many smart, creative, passionate people are out here in Greater Minnesota. And, you know, John made the point, you know, if you're in the Twin Cities, you can find accelerators, and you can find the Twin Cities Social Enterprise Alliance to help support your work. But when you're in Greater Minnesota, this can be kind of lonely business. You feel like maybe you're the only one. You probably can sympathize with that from your previous work.
Well, we've only got a couple seconds left, but very briefly, how do you measure the return on investment? It seems like a really squishy calculation. It's obvious that GrowShed is growing, but how will you measure whether or not the foundation will do this again? And the next application window opens in 2021. So very briefly, how do you measure that?
Well, that's a great question. We are actually still determining all of our measures to try to create an index. But of course, there are business measures. They're, you know, kind of easy to come by. There are social impact measures. You know, are you having the impact you intended to have? How many people are you serving? How are they being affected? Those sorts of things.
Well, John, congratulations and best of luck with GrowShed. It's very impressive. I'll be very excited to see what becomes of it. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all your hard work and making this fellowship opportunity possible for our region.
Thanks again for having us. This is great.
Thank you.
Well, perhaps you're the next Initiators Fellowship candidate. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been Lakeland Currents. What's currently on your mind? Send us your conversation ideas, and I look forward to seeing you next time.